For me, almost 3 years on T and having had top surgery and things, I don't really run into this issue so much anymore. But even now, I will be misgendered from time to time, not because someone's actually reading my gender incorrectly, but because they're just sort of on autopilot, and so if they've said "thank you ma'am" to the 5 customers in front of me, it naturally slips out again when I come up to the register. And I will admit, in the first second or so following that "thank you ma'am," my heart still kind of sinks and beats a little bit heavily, but my rebound is really quick now, and I obviously have no reason to be fazed by it, so I'm not. And honestly, if they didn't immediately correct themselves with an "oh sorry sir," which they always do, I definitely would not say anything anyway, because let's face it, I'd probably make a very unfortunate looking girl now. And I know that, 99+% of the world knows that. Why would I waste my time correcting a single person who obviously just needs a trip to the ophthalmologist or something? For the people who are just starting out in their transition, the experience is obviously a little bit different. But for what it's worth, take it from my experience that all sorts of people get misread. It seems like people don't really look at other people and study them in depth before deciding whether to call them he or she or sir or ma'am. I think people tend to pick up on a few small details, some general image like short person, slender frame, longish hair, therefore I'm going to go with she and ma'am, but if they really looked at the person, they might realize that they have facial hair or actually have really boyish or masculine features and present way more male than they thought on first glance. I mean, I even have cis male friends who are like 5'10", 6 feet tall and have long hair, and people will still say she to them even from the front because they have kind of a lanky build and wear tight clothes and have longish hair. And of course, on further inspection, the person who misgendered them feels like a damn fool. But my point is that trans people aren't the only ones who get misgendered, and sure, there are cases where a trans person is actually deliberately misgendered, but for the most part, the person who misgendered someone also feels really bad for their mistake. So, of course, it's not the end of the world for people who are born in the right body, and they can probably laugh it off a little more easily, and there's no reason for it to really shake their confidence. But it's also not the end of the world for trans people, even though it can sometimes make you feel really shitty and hopeless. And having been in this situation, I know it really sucks, and I know it can feel really bad, but you just have to try to stay as confident as possible and go on with life. And know that you've probably made the person who misgendered you feel like a huge tool in the case that you decided to correct them. And when it comes to that decision to correct someone, it's really a matter of what helps you stay more confident. If it's important to your confidence to say, hey, I'm actually a guy, then tell them, preferably in the most laid-back way possible. On the other hand, if you're never going to see the person again and it's not really that important to you and you can just shake it off, then yeah, go on with your life. But in either case, the way other people see us doesn't define who we truly are. And I know it's sometimes an important confirmation of our identity, and I'm not trying to play that down or anything. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, what defines you is how you feel, not how other people see you. And someday you will hopefully be in a place where people do see you the way that you identify. So it's just a matter of hanging in there and staying confident and true to who you are until other people can also see that. I think a good thing to do is not just think about something positive about being trans, but taking something you normally consider a negative aspect of being trans and casting it in a positive light. Tonight, all my examples are ridiculously dirty, but the least dirty is probably, well, on the negative side, you of course have the fact that trans guys aren't born with a biological dick. Well, on the plus side, if your cock's not to your partner's liking, you simply get a new one. Too short, go longer. Too thin, go thicker. Too pale, go purple and sparkly. No, in all seriousness, not that long, thick, purple, sparkly dicks aren't serious. But in all seriousness, something positive about being trans, well, I actually think it gives you the ability to relate to people in all sorts of situations, and it gives you a unique way of looking at things and understanding things. I know that's really general. I'm having a hard time coming up with a concrete example off the top of my head, but I'm actually really amazed at all the things I can relate to just by virtue of my trans history and having spent so much of my life living in the wrong body. Um, I have a lot of the usual fears, I'd say. I'm afraid of being outed, of being seen solely for my trans history if I'm outed, of facing violence if I'm outed. Um, I'm afraid of what will happen if I meet someone and we get feelings for each other before she actually knows about my past, and then losing her once I tell her. And it sounds weird, but part of me is actually even more afraid of not losing that person once I tell her. Um, I'm afraid of what's going to happen now that I'm basically at a point where there are no surgical options left that I'm satisfied with. I'm afraid of always feeling like I've just fallen short of how I'm really supposed to be. I used to have a really hard time managing dysphoria. I detested my body, and I of course had no control over certain aspects of it, and I couldn't stand that. It actually made me kind of crazy, and I tried to regain control of my body in whatever way I could. And for me, that was with regards to diet and exercise. I was exercising way too much and eating way too little. And as I got slimmer and the parts of me that I really detested, like my hips, were disappearing, I felt like I was gaining control, but the reality was that I was actually spinning out of control, and I ended up way more messed up than I was to start with. Fortunately, I'm beyond that now, and today if I'm dealing with dysphoria, I tend to just think of my wonderful and gorgeous cis friends who are absolutely perfect the way they are, but are constantly complaining about things that they wish they could change, whether it be through diet or exercise or surgery or some miracle by God, because it's just something they were born with and can't change no matter what they do. And when I think about that, I realize that no one is completely satisfied with the way they look. And in a way, my dysphoria is actually kind of a common ground with cis people. Oh yeah, and I probably cut back on masturbating, but you didn't need to know that. As for mental health, well, I basically spent a lot of my teen years on medications, and when I started taking testosterone about 3 years ago, I decided it would be a good idea to just stop all those meds and see if, as the testosterone made me appear on the outside, how I felt on the inside, if I just naturally was more at harmony, I guess, and if it just naturally resolved a lot of the depression and anxiety and other issues that I was struggling with, and well, it did. In terms of physical health, I keep trying to change my diet and be better about working out, which for me means working out less, not more. And I haven't really been successful with the diet part, but I did start eating vegetarian, and I've done it for almost 3 months now, and I'm going to stick with that. Alright, so number 13 wasn't really a question, it was just kind of like bathrooms, period. But I'm going to infer that it means like, which bathroom do you use? Do you have tips for using the bathroom? I don't know, something like that. Alright, ever since about 9th grade when I cut my hair short, I was getting like, oh my god, Sonny, you can't be in here, when I went into the women's restroom. So I've been using the men's restroom for a very long time. I don't use stand-to-pee devices or anything really. I'm always afraid I'm going to pee on myself, especially since most of the time I'm out using public restrooms. I'm at clubs and a little drunk. So I always use the stall. And here in Sweden there's always a line for the stall, which I find interesting. So all you guys who feel like you're alone and going to the stall to pee, you're not. I will say, it gets kind of awkward for me if a bunch of my friends are going in at the same time and they don't really know about me, and I'm just like standing there online for the stall, and then they all get to partake in this brotherly act of pissing on the same wall together while I just like stand there twiddling my thumbs. But honestly, trans guys do get a little vain when it comes to going to the bathroom. Like, honestly, why do we think that anyone gives a crap if we're pissing or shitting, standing or sitting? No one fucking cares. We're not some celebrity whose toilet paper is going to sell for $10,000 on eBay, for fuck's sake. Just go in there, do your business, and get out. Alright, passing tips. I've been sick all week, and I have virtually no voice left. So I'm going to leave this at one word, and maybe I'll come back and elaborate next week. But for now, my answer is confidence.